We stand against totalitarianism, particularly imperialist expansionist totalitarianism. We are for democracy and human rights, and we are for a worldwide prosperity that only free economies can give, and the pursuit of human happiness that only political freedom allows.
Good afternoon. Today I welcome a good friend, Doron Keidar. He's an IDF reservist for over 20 years, and what we're going to discuss today is the military buildup in the Middle East and the partnership with Israel and America. He actually was he was deployed during October 7th. He is an international speaker, IDF soldier of over 20 years, and he has the pulse on Israel and, very frankly, America too, in many respects. So today we're going to start with the military buildup, the partnership with Israel. And Doron, I'd like you to add any more context to your bio in relationship to what your background is before we get into the current events in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, that's most of the bullet points, so to speak. I have been also involved in executive protection for many years, and that is in that world that has given me a window into the politics, the geopolitics of what's going on between not just Israel and the United States, but Israel and European countries and Asian countries, not to mention the Middle Eastern countries around us. And so that's another angle that I'm gleaning my years of working in that world that has kind of given me an inside account, more than what you see in the headlines, like most people that read the news of something happening. I've had the privilege of being there when it was happening or when those issues were being discussed diplomatically and so on.
So you've been involved with boots on the ground, if I'm not mistaken, in regards to Lebanon, Syria, Gaza. What am I missing?
Yes, except for Syria. That was one front that my team actually missed.
Oh, you missed that. I apologize.
Yeah, we literally had just gotten released from a deployment when the Syria campaign opened up. So a lot of our friends were there actually, and kind of rubbed it in our face, so to speak, that, we got to go to another deployment, because kind of like in any war, it's not like bragging rights, so to speak, but if you're in a significant war like this one is, then there is, a feeling of, hey, I was on all these different fronts that we were involved in. But in particular, my team's main focus was actually Gaza, and we ended up with only one deployment to Lebanon. And that was not so fun to be, to be very frank, because it is very different than fighting in Gaza. The Hezbollah terrorists are way more sufficient warriors. They're better trained. They own the terrain, so to speak. And so that was a very hairy deployment, to put it lightly.
Great. Well, as an American, I appreciate your military service, and as my Israel audience, they will say that they appreciate your service with the IDF. So thank you very much. So currently, from my understanding and what I've been able to glean, and I've been focusing, just so the audience knows, on American politics and the culture war that's going on right now, and actually the color revolution. So my information is limited, so you can fill us in a little bit more as far as what has happened over the past couple days, maybe a week. My understanding is that two military, and I have this on my phone, so I apologize if I'm not looking at the screen, but two Iranian military provocations against the U.S. assets in the Middle East happened yesterday, which underscores the high tensions of negotiations planned for Friday. Yeah. So if you want to go into the drone attacks and how aggressive they have been and the posturing that's going on between both sides, Israel and America and Iran, and then maybe we'll go into the negotiations that are happening on Friday.
What I'll say about that, just from our experience from these drone strikes, because unfortunately we've We've been on the receiving end of multiple volleys of these attacks. In fact, my daughter, who's just turning 10 months old, she was born during one of those attacks. So my wife was in labor, and we ran to the shelters. And then after she gave birth, we ran to the shelters a second time in the same early morning of that Iranian missile ballistic attack, which is many times have also been included these long-range drones. So when we talk about drones, we're not talking about like, the kind that you fly, the cute little, camera drones. They're like a mini plane, basically, a small looking kind of plane-like with a payload.
What's their size? What's their diameter approximately so people can visualize?
Well, think about like a Cessna. It's about the size of
Oh,
a Cessna
wow.
plane. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's because you know what I mean. And I think that's important because, when I hear drone, right. And if I were a civilian, that's what I would be thinking. I would be thinking what I just mentioned, something that you take pictures with and films with or something, or security drones or whatever. But no, this is an actual payload. You know what? A similar example of that actually, and it probably taking it from a textbook example, so to speak, from the Nazis, was their long range missiles that also had wings on it. I forget the name of those, but those were very, very terrifying and devastating for World War II because it was a advanced long distance missile strike, essentially, right? And that was like essentially your first drones, so to speak. So it's kind of like that, and it's the idea is what it is to be able to navigate this this drone, and basically, unlike a ballistic missile that has a trajectory, right? The drone is usurpative, right? It can change course and so on. So it's much harder to intercept. So all that said, what I can say is that it seems to me like that was a very minor attempt on the U.S. fleets. And to me, it seemed like kind of like a bluff. Like the Iranians are basically posturing themselves in hopes that the U.S. is just going to pull back and not commit, so to speak. I'm pretty sure they know that they're outnumbered. I'm pretty sure they know that there's just no way that they're going to be able to withstand the United States military's might. I mean, let's be real. But the thing is, these people are demented. They're part of a death cult. And they don't care that the Iranian people become cannon fodder for their jihadist, sick, demented mindset of basically a death cult, right? We're willing to die for our cause. Well, the Iranian people aren't. They're not wanting to die for the sake of the mullahs, and definitely not for the sake of Islam. Many of them have dropped Islam. And here's a fun fact. The largest underground church in the world that I've heard, at least from my Christian friends, is in Iran. It's massive. Like, people are basically turning to Christianity. They're turning, to the God of love, compassion, versus what they've been force swallowed for years, just hatred and evil and, death to America, death to Israel. That's what they've been fed. And the Iranian people are sick and tired of that. And that's what I've heard, again, from Iranian people. I'm not an expert on Iran, but that's what I've heard. And from the interviews I've conducted, I've had an Iranian woman who converted to Christianity from Islam, and they murdered her husband, and they were going to kill her too. But because of international pressure and different churches, they were able to get her out of Iran, and now she's living in asylum or as a refugee. And so I also had a former Israeli Mossad agent who has spent many years in the intelligence community, and they're all saying the same thing, that the Iranian people are more secular and or veering towards Christianity, anything but Islam, anything but Sharia. And that's what the mullahs are terrified of. They're terrified of losing that control. They're terrified of losing what they've attempted for years to change a whole society. I think it's about 70 million people, if I remember correctly, in Iran. So it's a large number of people that have been under this regime. And again, it's the regime that's posturing this, not the people. The people are not at all wanting a fight with America, and definitely not with Israel. And that, I think, is very surprising when you look at boots on the ground reality for the Iranian people, that I think is being missed a lot of time when I hear reporting about Iran.
Right. And up until recently, I mean, real recently, there wasn't really in the mainstream media, at least here in America. I can't speak for Israel, but at least here in America, there wasn't much discussion in regards to or time spent on the killings that have been going on in Iran. So, what are we up to right now? I heard from one individual that it could be 40,000, 50,000 in the latest uprising in Iran, as far as individuals that have been murdered, killed, persecuted, and unfortunately are sitting somewhere in a morgue or just a facility.
So again, just to emphasize the point that I just made, the Iranian people have reached, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. They've reached their breaking point. They're willing to die to be freed from this regime. And so they've gone to the streets by mass, tens of thousands of people, rather hundreds of thousands of people, marching against the Iranian regime and the mullahs. And the sad reality is that the world has sat by and watched these people who has muster up the courage. And to me, the Iranian people are some of the most courageous people today that have they're willing to do whatever it takes, including facing horrible death by the hands of the regime, because they're merciless. You see them running people over with vehicles. You see them using shotguns with little small pellets. They use like birdshot. They don't use like something that you would use kind of in a tactical scenario. They use something that is very cruel, because when you have smaller little pellets that are impacting the individual they're targeting, then let's just say they die a much more miserable death and a lot more pain, and it's on purpose. So they do stuff like that. It's just pure evil. It's just pure ugly. They go into hospitals where the people that have been injured in the riots and the uprisings, and they go into the hospital where they're already connected with the IV and everything, or have like a breathing apparatus, from a machine, and they just literally take them and execute them in the hospitals. And they threaten the hospital staff not to take care and give medical care to any of the people, which, by the way, is an absolute violation of a doctor's oath that they take, that they are to save lives. And as an example, in contrast, here in Israel, when a terrorist carries out a terrorist attack and they end up in either a gun battle with the security forces, the IDF, or what have you, and they're injured, then guess what? We triage, and if the terrorist is in worse condition, so to speak, in the triage, they get priority and they get medical care. And can you imagine some of these doctors? Their own children were murdered by these terrorists on October 7th, for example. And imagine this terrorist is now laying on your operation table, and your duty is to save this scumbag's life. I mean, to put it very plainly. And yet they're able to uphold their medical oath and save these terrorist lives, which, in my opinion, they're, it's my personal opinion, their lives are not worth saving. You tried to kill people. For me, they should bleed out and die. That's again my personal opinion. But again, I don't act that out as a soldier, or if it's law enforcement or security. We follow protocol, and it sucks. But as far as my personal opinion, I think, you carry out a terrorist attack to kill innocent people, you definitely should not have your life saved, so to speak. But again, we live in a world where you have rules, regulations, and ethics, and that's what guides our society, which is completely different in Iran. There's nothing like that.
Israel upholds the ethics to the highest standard, and
Yes.
it's really difficult for me to watch all the propaganda that goes on around the world that Israel is the boogeyman, the bad guy,
Yeah.
and it's not true. Not true. I've been following Brigitte Gabrielle for years, and she talks about the exact same thing, as far as when Israel rescued her and her family, and she was injured quite bad from a bombing, and her and her mother were taken to the hospital, and same exact scenario, and that was many years ago, where they triaged the same people that were bombing her Lebanon community, and administered treatment to them before they did other people based on how critical they were. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. So
And it's
based
good
on
that you brought her up too, by the way, just to give people context. Brigitte Gabriel grew up in Lebanon, and Lebanon has unfortunately only seen hostility from Israel as a neighbor because we've constantly had to retaliate into civilian populations to go after the terrorists where they usually hide amongst the civilian population, which again in Lebanon is much easier for them because you have Druze, you have Alawites, you have Christians. It's a very mixed, or used to be a very mixed country, and they would use the non-Muslims as cannon fodder to hide in. And
Right.
so all that to say that, yeah, and it's the sad truth is that the Christian community who did nothing related to terrorism or anything have seen the nasty end of Israel's retaliation. And for her to be able to speak up and to have moral clarity and be able to understand the why and to speak out about that, that right there speaks volumes for those who are hating on Israel. In other words, if she's able to differentiate and realize that she, who has been a victim of Israeli military aggression, if you like to call it, or our military operations that have been conducted, and unfortunately has also affected people like her that have nothing to do with that, then how much more should you pay close attention to what people like her have to say about the conflict here between what Israel's up against and the ethics of our military? Yeah.
Correct. So let's move on. I mean, whatever you can disclose publicly as far as the buildup of the U.S. warships and Israel buildup and the partnership that's going on right now. If you can give the audience a picture of the buildup, what does the assets look like? And in your opinion, what should we anticipate in the next couple of weeks or sooner?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that Israel has been on alert for DEFCON 1. We've already experienced that. Actually, it wasn't just a readiness, but it became a reality where we came under existential threat from Iran, like I said, with multiple ballistic missile attacks. In fact, the largest ballistic missile attack in history. And we survived that by miracle, really by miracle, because
when was that again? That you got
that was
hit?
about a year ago. About a year
Right.
ago, if my estimate's correct, just about a year ago. And then the last one, I think,
How many ballistic missiles and bombings happened? Last I looked, when it was happening, maybe a week later, I
yeah.
don't remember. It was over 300 times in a very short period of time.
Yes, yeah. I forget the exact number, but it was massive. People can research it and Google that. But it was a massive wave, and scientifically and the top minds in ballistics and all that, they said it was an impossibility how many we intercepted. It wasn't supposed to happen. In other words, our systems aren't that good, but miraculously we made it through that, and we're able to intercept
Amen.
a high. I think it was like close to 90% of the rockets, and I mean, and they're huge. They're like the size of a bus. So when you think of a school bus, like your classic American school bus, they're about that size or longer. Some of these, they're massive.
Realize that. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
until after the fact, about a year ago, when this was going on, and I was looking at pictures on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are massive, because these are long-range ballistic missiles. That's literally that's what it means. So it's not one of those little rockets. These are pretty massive, and they fired hundreds. That much I know, including, like I said, those drones and so on. And plus, they also have like a special warhead actually that splits up before it makes impact. So when your counter rocket system is trying to knock that out, it will have multiple warheads release and then make impact, right?
So the ultimate impact, not just on one target, but the surrounding diameter.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. So so the system's seeing one rocket, and then last minute it will split up into like 7 or something, right? Warheads that just split out from that. So yeah, it's very devious, nasty systems. But yeah, so what Israel and the United States are doing is, again, for on our end, it feels like we're going back to DEFCON 1 as the Israeli society.
So let me interrupt just for a second.
Yeah.
For the non-military people or people that have not lived in a war zone for decades, what's DEFCON 1?
That basically means the highest threat to the society, to the nation. So so like the whole nation is under imminent threat, and therefore we all have to take cover in our bomb shelters and hope for the best, literally. And so that's where Israel was under. It was under a very, very massive barrage. And again, they were targeting strategic targets, both military, intelligence, you name it. And then also just in general civilian targets as well, to create the maximum damage and chaos as possible. So
I just want to say, I just want to
yeah.
repeat what you said earlier so the
Yeah.
audience can get a picture.
Mm.
Israel citizens and residents live under constant threat. If you remember, Doran's wife was in labor and in a bomb shelter when they delivered their last baby. This is
Yeah.
constant every day. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's right. That's exactly it. And it's a crazy reality. I mean, for us, it's normal, so to speak, but that's not normal, and it shouldn't be for anybody. And so, yeah, we're back to round 3, 4, whatever it is right now of that. And so we've all been ready now for over a week. And so it's kind of hard to tell what's going to happen because we've expected this attack already like over a week ago. But what I can tell you is that the Israeli Air Force is very, very active lately. That I can tell just from hearing the constant jets up above us and so on. And just like, again, like you can feel the beat, so to speak, the heartbeat of what's, something's up out of normal, not just training or what have you. Again, because of, signs we saw that led up to the former attacks. So all of that is there. So basically, the difference is, though, is that now you have the U.S. fleets with all the payloads that they have in order to carry out their strategic targeting if the Iranian regime does not comply with what the United States is requesting, which is that they stop genociding their own people. And to be honest, it's not really their own people, right? Because again, the mullahs came from outside of Iran, so to speak. I mean, some have ethnic relations to the ethnic groups in Iran, but what I mean is the outside influence, meaning Iran was not a super Islamic country until the mullahs took over, right? So it was like, so you had some Muslims, you had Zoroastrians, you had all the different religious groups. And it used to be like that. Like that was the norm, is like you just have all these groups, and it was like a moderate, so to speak, country, right? In this region. And so the mullahs came in and they basically decided that they're going to create the Islamic Revolution, and that they're going to basically spearhead the caliphate. And so that happens with different Muslim countries that feel that they're the representation of the ultimate ruler, so to speak, of who should be the ones to usher in the Islamic, world domination. And the caliph, the Khalif, if you like, it's the Messiah, right? Like their Messiah. So it's like they're trying to usher in their messianic age. The only difference between them and the Christians and the Jews is that Christians and Jews are mostly praying for the Messiah to come and working hard at doing good works. The Jewish community or the Jewish world, we have a concept called tikkun olam. We're investing in bettering the world or fixing the world, directly translated. But it doesn't mean like we have the power to fix the world, but rather through God and through being God-fearing and following his commandments, then we can basically bring a fixing into a broken and fallen world from basically the original sin with Adam and Eve in the garden, right? So the whole concept is like the for example, out of the temple service, you have what's known as the sacrifices, and people kind of in the Christian world will fixate on the animals and them dying and all that, but the word korban literally means, or within the root, is to draw near. So the whole concept and the whole purpose of the Jewish people is to draw ourselves as a people, faith-wise, to draw near to God through the commandments he's given us and through the process of the worship that he's given us. Same with the Christian,
yeah,
you know,
same with the Christians. That's where I'm sorry. That's where I was going to go with it.
Yeah, and the same with the Christian world that's inherited that, right? So you have Christian missionaries that go out to do good. They feed the poor and the hungry and build hospitals. They build schools. They literally are doing the same thing as the Jewish world, because they've derived it from our Bible, right? I mean, that's what we share, the Judeo-Christian world. We have that in common. Not so much with Islam.
Our 10 commandments
with the jihadists.
Right, our 10 commandments come from the Jewish Bible.
Yes.
The Old Testament.
Correct.
We share those common values and principles, lock, step, and barrel. That's why we say America is Judeo-Christian, and I would say, other parts of the world too. We follow the same commandments as you do.
Yes. And again, and that's a good point that you said, in other parts of the world, because I want people to really draw back and think for a minute. How would the world be if it was not for Christianity?
Right.
The Jewish people don't export their religion. We don't look for converts, right? In Judaism, that's not our practice. But the beautiful thing I find with Christianity, which is also, this is a controversial statement, right? Because within the Jewish world, we're very much against missionizing, right? Just because of the bad history between the Crusades and others who did wrong in the name of Jesus and in the name of Christianity. But I look at it historically and realistically, and I look at the world, and I ask myself, if Christianity did not export the Torah, export God's law, God's commandments, God's word, and all the good that comes out of Christianity, right, through Jesus's teachings and Proverbs and everything, and his disciples, right, the world would be still a pagan world. Your ancestors, if they come from Europe or from South America or North America, would still be bowing down to trees and rocks to worship. Mm-hmm. Right. And we would probably be sacrificing our children, right, as sacrifices to our gods. That would have been the world without the gospel that went out of Jerusalem and exported, right, what the Jewish people haven't done as proactively, so to speak, right? And that to me is the beauty of Christianity, and that is why the world we live in many parts of the world where paganism is gone and done away with, and you have instead Christian roots or Christian values, right? Or in Europe, you like in Scandinavia, you have the cross and all the flags, because that's a nod to the Christian foundations that those nations are founded upon. So that's right there to me something that you need to think about. You can't look at the world that we live in today without being grateful for what Christianity contributed. And that's to all the post-Christian morons in the West that are saying that's passé and we don't need that. I'm like, oh yeah, have you ever been to idol worshiping countries? I have. It's an armpit. It's terrible. Paganism and idolatry leads to really nasty practices, and actually is backwards. It puts humanity in a backwards state. If that's what you want, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I don't want it. I don't want it. So I want to get into the Western, why it's important for the regime in Iran to fall, and how it's interconnected in different hemispheres here, including our national security. And but first I want to ask you before we go, because one question was not answered yet,
So sorry.
What do you, no, that's okay. I'm glad that you got into the Christian values. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's going deeper than I anticipated, but I mean, that's awesome. I'm so glad. And the more you can preach that, the better. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just don't know how much time we have, so I want to get back to my original question, and we can get into that more. But what do you anticipate with your experience? We're looking at negotiations on Friday with Iran, but it's been typical of Iran to just negate whatever negotiations, ignore them, bomb some more. I mean, just from your experience, what do you anticipate? Because I hear some people online saying Trump, he buckled, he buckled. It's not going to happen. They're not. He's going to he's backing out of his word as far as supporting Iran. So give me your perspective and what you anticipate.
Yeah. Well, here's my opinion. Again, you need to look at, the thing is, you need to understand this is a religious war. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm alluding to that just here earlier about what the Judeo-Christian faith has contributed to the Western world as we know it. And that right there is exactly what Iran has been on the forefront to destroy, on the forefront. And so, people think, and unfortunately, even veterans are saying this, and it breaks my heart, really. Like it hurts to see veterans embittered and angry and feeling like we're getting sucked into another forever war. Like you'll hear statements like that. And the thing is, I understand you feel like you've been betrayed, right, as a warfighter because of the politics and the why you fought for what and so on, right? Because every warfighter really, all you need is a good cause to satisfy the sacrifice that you're making, and the brothers that you lost, or the women that get killed downrange, right? The men and women that have been fighting for your country. You want to be able to satisfy the why. And
Right.
and so I know a lot of veterans are embittered about that, and they look at this as in a very, how to say, in a very bitter and twisted view too, because certain people are taking advantage of that, and they're saying Israel's behind this. Benjamin Netanyahu is behind this. So Israel's dragging us, America, into another forever war. It's Israel's fault. And that's just pure ignorance. The Jihad war that was fought, it was also against the Iranian proxies. It always has been. Iran has always been a key player in the Islamic Revolution since 1979, and they've always been involved with funding and or equipping and or training the top terrorists globally to destroy the West. And so major terror attacks in Europe, thanks to Iran. Major terrorist attacks that were carried out in the United States, thanks to Iran. Major terrorist attacks that were carried out in Canada, in South America. Everywhere you look, they've had their fingerprint, okay, one way or other, involved in those terror attacks. So it has nothing to do with Israel. The only reason why Israel's, the main one that is, so to speak, the main key player here in this scenario is because we're the closest and we're the easiest, smallest target for them to annihilate. And that's been their goal. Their goal has been, first, get rid of what they call the small Satan, being Israel, and the great Satan they call America. So that's what the Iranian regime is saying. Don't take my word for it. This is not Israeli propaganda. I don't work for the Israeli government to peddle or push any agenda. This is my
And you
opinion.
have an American flag in the background and
Yes, ma'am.
Israel symbols, right?
That's right. And
Exactly.
that's my father's flag. My father fought in World War II. And so exactly, my whole family is actually from America. I'm the only one besides my younger brother that's grown up here and been raised in Israel. So we're the only ones that are the exception, so to speak, to my family background. But again, my messaging here is, as a security expert who has been working to counter terrorism for many, many years, either in the military or in security or in police operations that I've been a part of as a volunteer police, that I'm also one of the hats that I've worn for many years. This is just what we see. We see it from the intelligence that we gather, that these are the key players. Now, again, Iran's not the only one, okay? Just to be clear, Iran's not the only one. Qatar is a very, very key player. They have lots and lots of money, but Iran is really more the theology. They're more the preaching. They're more the incitement. They're more the ones to kind of stir the pot, right? And so that's why I say they're one of the key influencers, so to speak, because they're the ones kind of strategizing, not to mention also funding. But the thing is, for Americans to really be rid of, and the West in general, because it's not just the United States that's under the gun, so to speak. It's all Western civilization, all Christian nations currently, they're Christian and or post-Christian nations, because to them, it doesn't matter. According to the Quran, it teaches that the worst are the Jews and the Christians, and those who are, they're neither, right? They're like, well, you're still a kafir, you're still basically going to hell, and we still need to treat you as such. And the way they treat you is with disdain, right? They treat you as a dhimmi, is what they call it. And they do it to each other, by the way, too. So any Muslim, here's the other crazy thing, another category of these infidels, is a Muslim who befriends the Christian or the Jew is also considered as damned as they are. Yeah.
Correct.
So I mean, that's the thing. People need to understand, again, it's a religious war. It has nothing to do with the state of Israel. It has nothing to do with land. It has nothing to do with the Zionist, enterprise. None of that is the cause to all this violence, to all this evil. What it is the jihadist Islamic revolution, which Iran initiated in 79, and they've been perpetuating it all these many years now for 40 plus years.
So let's connect the dots a little bit more as far as the same war that Israel is fighting, we're fighting. And it's across all 6 continents. I don't know. But anyway, as far as our Western hemisphere, some people don't understand, why did Trump go in to Venezuela and extradite Maduro? Well, because Maduro is in bed with Iran. Maduro is in bed with China. They actually came up with a Chinese agreement and installed 2 satellite locations so they could spy on America. Well, why would they do that? Well, because they want to build a presence in Latin America and South America to kill the big Satan too, while they're trying to kill the little Satan in the Middle East, which is Israel. And I mean, I've done so many posts on this. So much research on this. I had Adrian Calamel on. I don't know if you know who he is. He's also a Middle Eastern expert. He understands it too. Iran has spread its tentacles across all the continents, so they could eventually have the caliphate. And they put their foot soldiers in there, their bots in there to confuse the people on the ground. So I wanted to bring that to the audience's attention. It's a joint partnership with Israel, but this partnership, in a selfish sense, for each country is for their own survival. We just have the same enemy and the same endpoint. We want a peaceful world and to get rid of all these terrorist proxies.
That's exactly it. The thing is that people are mixing is that, yes, we have our own agenda. And the agenda, of course, is Israel first, right? Just like these so-called America first people, which in my opinion, they're morons. They don't understand what that means because the way I'm seeing, the way they're interpreting or trying to articulate it, it comes across very ignorant and actually is shooting yourself in the foot, because what they want to do, and again, not all the America first people, but it's the ones who are the loud minority, as always, who take a concept, take an idea that sounds good, sounds patriotic, but then they spin off of that into something crazy and nonsensical. So one of which is that we need to cut ties with Israel. Israel is the big bad problem for America. and we need to just cut them off. And that would be a very bad mistake, because Israel is actually the nation that has contributed to America's technological edge globally against all your threats. Because again, it's the Islamic threat from Iran is not the only threat to the United States. You mentioned China, you have North Korea, you have Russia, and you have many other players out there. But yes, what Trump did, and again, Trump isn't Israel's pawn. People who think that are really ignorant, because he's the last person that's going to be pushed around, to my knowledge, of any president that I can think of that
He's
will be bullied.
actually pushed back on Netanyahu a couple of times.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
who's running the show? I think Trump is, not Israel.
Trump is running the show hardcore. And
Yes.
that's the thing. People are freaking out because they're not used to a president that basically is more hands-on, I think, than many other presidents before him. And that's the one on the one hand. And on the other hand, he's just very aggressive to get what he wants, right? He's not as we say in Israel, he's not a frère, he's not a sucker, he's not a loser, he's not pushover. Quite the contrary. And that's one of his strong attributes. And I think that's also what's put America in a very, very good position, including the operation in Venezuela, which was very important. That was a very important power play. It had nothing to do with what people have made conspiracy over, made all these stories, and somehow they tie it into Israel. Because you know what people say, this is a statement I've heard, that anything that you accuse Israel of is usually what you're guilty of. That's the true definition of anti-Semitism.
So you
So when you hear people making crazy statements, it's usually, right, there's something there. In other words, right, it's like you're calling the other what you are and trying to deflect and gaslight people on and get the attention off of what you actually think, that you actually believe those crazy ideas, But yeah, so to try to throw Israel into that is just ridiculous. Israel has zero interest there, except for, of course, the terrorist entities. But that, again, that's like more of like a Mossad thing. It has nothing to do with a national land grab. Israel does not want land. We don't want other countries' resources either, right? That's not, I've never seen anything to point to that to be even remotely true. What that was is an America first positioning, however you want to call it, move to put America, because like you mentioned, China, they were just about to make some very strategic moves. And then Trump came in and then basically cut that off last minute when they thought they had the upper hand. And that was a very strategic move to cut off the Chinese control that was putting them in positions of strategy against the United States, is one of what I've read. Because again, I'm not an expert on this. This is not my expertise, but from reading from people who are, this is one of the assessments they made, and they can articulate it much better than I can. But to me, that makes way more sense than an Israeli controlled op, so to speak. And the same is going with this mission with Iran, because in order to make this big mission that's happening now, that America's putting themselves in position to make the move if they don't comply, what led to this moment was the taking out of the Venezuelan leader that was being used for these nefarious activities. Not to mention, one of the greatest threats to Americans today is drugs. And so I have very good friends in the DA, by the way, and I do know a thing or two about things I can't talk about, right? Because they're sharing with me in confidence. But when I've talked to them, let me just say that the battle that these men and women are up against is almost impossible. That's how aggressive these, and by the way, who benefits from the drugs? It's terrorist groups.
Iran and China.
It's terrorist groups. It's nations that want to benefit to take down America, right? And so they're trying to weaken America morally, weaken America with drugs, and make profit off of it while they're doing it. And it's also the same, by the way, with the sex industry and pornography, by the way. There's many venues and ways that they're making black money, so to speak. And And so again, from what I've heard and listened to from some of my good friends, it's a very demonic, evil agenda against Americans. And
So I
to
just want to share
criticize
with you,
Trump
Doran.
is this
I want
ignorance, in
to
my opinion.
It is ignorance. I just want to share with you in the audience, and I don't usually share too much in regards to personal information. But when it
Yeah.
comes to the drugs that have come up about, through the southern border and the northern border, we
Yeah.
100,000 people or more a year were dying. I actually had a family member die from the drugs.
Mm.
My niece had a 6-week-old baby and she overdosed on some stamped pill with the baby in her
Wow.
lap. So it hits home to many,
Wow.
many Americans. And making that connection is so important because
Yeah.
because they make the money off the drugs and then they exchange hands as far as the money, and it goes back to Iran, and then Iran is able to re-equip their artillery in
Yep.
order to, bomb more nations, bomb more shipping straits, whatever it is.
Correct. And that's all falls under the category of dawah. Okay. The
Hmm.
Islamic jihadist concept of dawah. You probably have heard of taqiyya. Most
Hmm.
commonly, Westerners know about taqiyya. They can lie to you, whatever. But dawah, it can be used in many different ways. So think about it as in propaganda. Think of it as in so like the news networks, right? So these Islamic agendas, these jihadic Islamic agendas, are feeding, for example, all Western media from coverage of the Middle East via via Al Jazeera, right? So Al
Hmm.
Jazeera is like the main source. They glean all information. If it's the BBC, the NBC, and all the alphabet soup mainstream media agencies, and so and again, this is Islamic jihadist terrorist run news agency, and they're feeding you dawah, they're feeding you deception and lies, they're feeding the American and the European people with those lies, and that's why we're getting all this pushback from Americans, like I said, that are now making these crazy allegations that, oh, Israel's behind this and Israel. Who fed you that? Who hates the Jews more than anyone else? It's these Islamic
Russia,
Muslim, yeah,
Iran.
Russia,
Hmm.
Iran, and exactly, and also the communists.
Hmm.
Again, the Russian thing, it's a won't get too much into that because again, it's less my expertise. But I have had an expert on that on my podcast. She's a wonderful researcher, and people are welcome to look into that. But it comes from a different agenda, if you like. One is
Hmm.
fueled by religion, but it's a religious how to say, it's a religious, but it's also an
Active
take
measure.
action. Yes, it's not just like religion for ourselves, but it's about taking action, and very aggressive and bad action, as we've seen so many times, unfortunately. And so they're all making money off of it too, and that's the thing. So they both do the propaganda. They also get drugs to you, human trafficking, etc. And by the way, that's also honey trapping. Politicians or people of key people in key positions, so that they can position themselves in a strategic way, just like you would have a CIA or the KGB or the Israeli Mossad. That they do the same thing, right? I mean, it's dirty work, but usually you're doing it for your nation, and you have if you like, a good agenda or cause behind the why you're doing that. These guys, it's global jihad. That's the why. That's the what. And for Americans not to realize that's what you're up against, not the Zionist regime and control of Hollywood and this and that and the other. Again, whatever Israel's being blamed about, or Jews, again, not all of it is false. Okay, there are unfortunately Jewish elites in all those industries that I mentioned as well. But
That's like
it
any
doesn't.
group, any group.
Yes, but it doesn't represent Judaism. It doesn't represent Israelis. It doesn't represent Israeli government. That's not, again, I've worked with these people, like I said, doing security. I've seen them behind closed doors. They're not some kind of, like devious, sitting there going, "Oh, I'm going to control the world," kind of people. They're normal
Sucking the
people like
blood
you and
out of
me.
other people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I've
they're
heard all kinds of
politicians.
crazy stuff.
And politicians are dirty and they do dirty things to get, political gain and whatever. But
Mhm.
it's not to the extent that some of these people try to insinuate. It's extreme. And it's like, guys, enough. Let's
So
focus
let's
on
let's move
facts
to
and the main threat, which is jihadist Islam, and the main key players that we are mentioning here.
right. So let's focus on the influencers because I've been
Yes.
real hard on certain influencers,
Yeah.
and including Megyn Kelly,
Yeah.
including Tucker Carlson, including Dave Smith, including Candace Owens. She's a basket case. She's totally lost her mind, in my opinion. But and others and others,
Yeah.
and then we have the Steve Bannons of the world, and a few other people that are like, we don't want another war. We don't want another war, or we do not want to fund any more of our tax money to Israel in regards to helping them fight their wars. It's
Correct.
not just their war, it's our war. And what really infuriates me is everybody brings up APAC controls Congress. Do
Right.
you guys realize, the audience, that APAC, the lobbyist group, is less than, they spend in aggregate less, I mean, in total, they spend less than 1% of the overall total aggregate of all lobbying in Washington, D.C. So tell me,
Yeah.
with less than 1% is what they spend of the total pie, how can they control all of Washington? It
Yep.
doesn't make sense. It just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yes, you're right. And I make this point all the time. I say, folks, you need to realize, if you think America is such a great country and so powerful, but yet is so easily swayed by 0.02% of the world population, you're insane. You're insane. There is no way Israel has that kind of power, clout. Yes, we have one of the most leading intelligence agencies in the world. That doesn't mean they're able to topple whole countries and governments, although I'm sure we've tried in certain countries, right? But what I can say is, when it comes to the United States, no, impossible. Maybe not impossible, but let's just say it is a very, very low strategic, not strategic. What's the word? Oh man, it's a very low probability. Okay, it's a very low mathematical probability of that even being, with the resources we have and what we're able to do. I'm sorry, like I don't think so.
So let me ask you a question, because we're
It's
getting
just
close to
nonsense. It's just nonsense.
we're getting close to closing down. So there's a couple more questions I want to
Yeah,
ask you.
yeah.
So when it comes to, what is your strong message to the Dave Smiths of the world, to the Megyn Kellys of the world, in regards to, you have it wrong. It is a strategic interest of America and Israel. We're both fighting the same enemy. And second, they're complaining about, and rightfully so to a certain extent, we don't want a forever war. I don't want to be involved for 20 more years and watching, I don't know, 10 handful of people dying every day on the ground in the Middle East. Why is this going to be different?
So first of all, I agree with them on that. Okay. Unfortunately, I fought in multiple wars. I'm the first one that's going to tell you, and everyone who's fought in a war, we're the first ones to tell you, we don't want to go to war. We don't want to go fight in any wars.
Mhm,
We're not
mhm.
interested in that. So we're the first ones and the most motivated ones, so to speak, not to get sucked into any war that either one of us is going to have to die for, if it's just a meaningless cause. So 100%, make sure that if you have to go to war, count the cost. Is it really worth it? Is it really essential? Do we really have to do it? And when it comes to Iran, I say the absolutely yes. You have to take them down, and not just Iran, but every other terrorist entity around the globe that poses a threat to Western civilization and or directly towards the United States, of course. You have to eliminate those threats, because if not, if just like weeds, you leave it be, yeah, you'll have some peace of mind for a while. Yeah, you're not going to see American women and men and women dying in some desert in the middle of nowhere for no good reason, right? So yeah, you'll enjoy that peace, the quiet, but what you don't realize is you're actually letting the enemy, who sleeps, eats, breathes your demise. That is at the forefront of everything that consumes them.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. These people, when they wake up in the morning, they're figuring out, how am I going to destroy Israel? Number one, because they're the easiest target. Let's start with a small little country like Israel. Then, how am I going to destroy America? And then, how am I going to destroy Europe? They're actually doing it simultaneously, by the way.
Yes.
Is the tactic I'm seeing. They're already in Europe, they're already in Canada, and they're already in the United States and South America.
They're building pretty strong in the United States.
Yeah.
And people are finally starting to wake up. We need more people and politicians. We need more to wake up.
Yes.
I live
Yes.
I live in a state that is one of their targets. And
Yeah.
they're looking at, and it makes a lot of strategic sense. They're looking at the states that have the largest electoral college votes. They're targeting Texas, they're targeting Georgia, they're targeting Florida.
Correct.
And yeah, they just don't
And that's
want.
the dawa part. That's the dawa.
Mhm,
That is the
mhm.
dawa. You guys need to research that. That's a very important concept of how and what they're doing and strategizing, like you said. It's not necessarily terrorists bombing themselves or whatever, right? It's the silent jihad, the quiet jihad, not firing
Soft
one
power.
bullet. Yeah, that's the most dangerous, because they use usurpative ways, right, to disarm you, to lull you, and then use your own laws against you, and to create a caliphate or a jihadist Sharia law reality. And this is why I've told different senators and different governors and leaders in America that I've had personal conversations with, when they ask me, so what do you suggest we do in my district or my state, etc. My answer has always been the same, and it has been for years. It's not some kind of new thing. I've been saying this for many, many years, that you need to outlaw Sharia in your state. And then hopefully, I don't know if you can get this as a federal law nationwide, but Sharia should be outlawed in every Western nation, period. So you've already beat them to the punch, so to speak, because yes, they're going to use your laws and they use your freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But if you see that Islam is not a religion like any other religion, it's a religion to outdo and do away with all other religions. Oh, and mainly targeting Judaism and Christianity in specific. In the Quran, it is what it
It's
says.
not only a religion, and that's just a small part of it. It's
Yes.
primarily like 90% political and
Yes.
dominance and
Yes.
infiltrating the culture, and it's judicial. It's their laws, and
Correct.
10% of it is religion. So it's all encompassing. It's just not a
Yes.
religion like Christianity or Judaism.
No.
So I
And it
have
shouldn't be
another.
treated as such. That's why. That's the argument. That's the why.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
not because we
mhm.
have a bias towards another religious group. That's not the case.
Right. I have a last question for you, and then I'm gonna, have you provide some information on how we can contact you. And then I will hopefully have you come back. It's been a great honor to have you today. My last question for you is, given you talked about you were there for October 7th, you and your wife and your family have also been through a lot of different bombings and whatnot. what would you like to share with the audience that they may not have heard about that happened on October 7th or later that
Mm.
the public refuses to acknowledge, see, recognize, or report?
Well, I actually learned this recently from a reporter that came here and used me as a resource to show him around and so on. He pointed out, he said, in America, and this is a reporter, right, who's been on CNN and all these big news agencies, and he pointed out, he said, in America, we view October 7 as kind of like the Bondi attack in Australia. Like it was a tragic attack. One day, a few scores of casualties, no big deal. I mean, like a big deal, but not like massive. It wasn't like a 9/11. It wasn't like, this massive terrorist attack on your nation, right? It wasn't a military infiltration into your country. And I said, that's interesting, because I actually kind of assumed people knew that, because there was so much shared online, both from the terrorists and from Israelis saying, look what happened to us. This was very terrible, right? And we've been saying this for over 2 years now, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, apparently, the Western media, which I don't watch or listen to, so I don't know, but he's informing me that that was the perspective. And so my answer to that is this. Yes, the attack on October 7 was a military attack from a military, not a military, it's a terrorist wing, but military style, okay? A foreign entity that entered Israel as an invasion. And you had 7,000 terrorists, okay? Let that sink in for a minute. 7,000. We're not talking about a small group of terrorists that carried a small attack, okay? So this dwarfs what happened on 9/11 as far as attackers. So we had 7,000. About roughly half of them were actual terrorists that had actual training and a mission and objectives and so on. I mean, very detailed, extremely detailed, okay? Just like any military op. You have your orders, you have your mission, you have your objectives, and you carry it out. That's what these terrorists did. When they had invaded on the first wave, I think it was just a few hours later, they called and they basically made like a public call, so to speak, an announcement to the Gazans, to the people in Gaza. Israel is falling to our hands. The Zionist regime is falling. Brothers, come join us. And those who answered the call, right, were civilians who literally decided to join in on the massacre, on the murdering, the raping, the killing, the slaughtering, the looting. It was a lot of it was actually just looting, actually. But that's what our military and our police had to encounter on October 7, was thousands of terrorists everywhere, / non-terrorists, right? Non-official terrorists. But it doesn't matter. When you carry out a terrorist act, yeah, I don't care if you're a Jew or a Christian or a Buddhist, okay? You're a terrorist. To me, that's the definition of a terrorist, is someone who carries out evil attacks against other people, innocent people, and basically just doing things to be evil, not because it's a military operation, right? And that's what happened on October 7. So it was very evil. And it was purposely too, was to bring hostages into Gaza. And this has just been leaked, by the way, now that we have all our hostages back. The head general, well, he was a former general, excuse me, retired general, one of our most renowned and respected generals in the military, not one of those careerists, like actually somebody that we really, really respect, even the guys, so to speak, out in the field, not just, elitist officer people, right? They're just careerists, as we call them. He was asked by the prime minister on October 7 to take over the negotiations for the hostages. So he made it public and said, we got intel that told us that the hostages were supposed to be held for 10 years was the plan. Not just a few months. not just a few days, for 10 years. So in essence,
Why?
in order to prolong the hurt, the pain, the suffering of the nation of Israel, because it's been a national, it's affected us all. So right in my traffic circle to my community that I live in, we have these yellow chairs, right? These plastic yellow chairs representing, because the yellow became the representation of the hostages, right? Like you wear the pink ribbon because we're about fighting cancer, right? Or what have you.
So
we had
yellow means bring them home. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
yes. And so imagine the whole nation, everybody is heartbroken of every hostage that's being held in Gaza. And we have been publicly in every community had a presentation, right, of our public outcry saying we're waiting for every hostage to come back home, because every hostage is us. Every one of those that's in there, it represents us. It's not just a person that has nothing to do with me. And that's what they wanted. How much longer can we prolong this national pain for the Jewish people? And by the way, it's not just Jews. Yeah, there were Muslims that were held hostage in Gaza. There were
Americans.
Americans. There were Christians from I think it was I forget which country, but it was in Africa. I forget now off the top of my head. So you also had Africans that were here studying agriculture. They had nothing to do with the conflict, and they unfortunately became victims. We had Thai people from Thailand also. So these were the victims. But the craziest thing, like I said, you had Muslims, Bedouin Muslims,
Right.
their own, supposedly their own kind, right? But remember, because you befriend the Christian or the Jew, you are as them. And in their minds, the terrorists, they were using Quran to hold these people hostage in Gaza.
I want to thank you so much. I'd love to bring you back,
Yeah.
Doron, as far as another interview. There's so much more to cover. It's been one of the best interviews I've had so far. It's been a real pleasure. I would like, well, why don't you tell the audience where you can find yourself and the company that you represent, if you can disclose that, and
Sure.
any other institutions or links that you'd like to bring up today.
Sure. So if anybody wants to find any of my online work, because I've done Israel advocacy independently to kind of push back towards all this crazy online chatter and demonization and what have you, and basically say, well, I was there. Let me tell you our story. This is what we've experienced. And so I started a podcast on my YouTube channel and then also on my Instagram and Facebook and every social medium to get the word out. So all of that can be found at my name, DoronKeidar.com. Under there, you can find the movie that we've made with David Kern called I Am Israel, the Mountain of the King. So the link to that is there. The latest petition that we've created, it's actually one of my, the Christian Relations Director for Cry for Zion, John Anderson, created a petition to petition pastors and leaders and just Christians in general to take a stand against the anti-Semitism within the church, and mainly naming people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, those who claim to be Christian but are spouting and promoting anti-Semitism globally in the name of Christ, in the name of Christianity. And so that petition is there as well. If you want to take a stand against anti-Semites of today and be a Bonhoeffer who stood up against that in his country in Germany as a Christian pastor, I highly recommend that you sign that petition. And we've had very, very, very key leaders. And again, you can see the list of the key leaders, Christian pastors, if you want to know as far as clout and who's standing with that petition.
So do me a favor, send me all those links via my email.
Yes,
You have my contact, and I will put it in the show notes before I publish.
Perfect.
If you would, I
Absolutely.
definitely. And if you could come back, what I would like to discuss next, as soon as possible, by the way, is you were at AmFest.
Mhm.
You were also at the second annual Combat Anti-Semitism Conference in Israel. We didn't
Correct.
talk about that today, and I really wanted to.
No.
There was
Yeah.
so much to talk about. So if you could just shoot me an email when you give me those links and let me know your next availability. I'd like to bring you back on as soon as possible, and we can discuss those topics.
Absolutely.
I want to
Thank
thank
you.
you. I want to thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again. And thank you for accepting. You don't even know who I am. So thank you very much. In
Well,
faith
it's
and
been an honor.
freedom, pardon?
I said it's been an honor. Thank you.
Same here. In faith and freedom, everybody safe. Everybody stay safe today, please. And God bless America. God bless Israel. And let's all pray for peace in the world. Amen. Have a great day, y'all. Good night.
History shows that it is precisely when totalitarian regimes begin to decay from within. It is precisely when they feel the first real stirrings of domestic unrest